wonderful puppet show on the stage was made of living people. Puppet masters will break all their joints, tear the skin off their faces to make it easier to paste the masks, and then fix their limbs on the wooden boards. And a mannequin that can be manipulated at will is made. They are writhing in pain on the stage, which is worse than death. After the show, the puppeteer dropped the strings, and they immediately turned into a puddle of flabby flesh. Shortly afterward, the police received a report that a man's body had been found, folded in half and then placed in a box, and the death was very strange. The next day, the police found another dead person, or the same modus operandi, and these two dead people are very similar in height and size. The difference was that the second victim was painted with red nail polish. Missing with him at the time was his girlfriend, but her whereabouts are still unknown. The police analyzed that the murderer must have had some special fetish, because the two males did not meet the requirements in appearance. So they were killed, while the girlfriend of the deceased met the requirements. So she was left behind, now most likely still alive. The killer must still be looking for new male targets. Soon after, the police found another male body, like the same to before, but he had a bloody hole in his hand pierced by a nail, and all the bones in his body had been broken. The town has been hit by a series of murders. Each of the victims was folded in half and then stuffed into a wooden box. Some of them were stained with red nail polish. Some had holes in their hands pierced by nails, and all the joints on their bodies had been broken. Based on the clues available, the police already have a basic speculation that the murderer should be a puppeteer who uses living people to perform until they are tortured to death. The police found a clothing store, threw the performance clothes worn by the deceased, and asked the owner if he had sold a set of such clothes. The owner said he had to check the information, but the police turned his head. He even drove to slip away first. It is obvious that he and the puppeteer are in cahoots. The boss runs to tell the puppeteer that the police have begun their investigation, and the puppeteer, fearing that his whereabouts will be exposed, kills the clothing store owner on the spot. On the other hand, the police learn that another father and son have disappeared, and they have to solve the case as soon as possible. They checked the information of some local puppeteers and found that decades ago, there was a pair of very outstanding puppeteers and sons in their local area. Because of an unfortunate encounter with thugs, the father died in front of his son, and the puppets they were using at that time were dressed exactly the same as those who died. The murderer must be the son. The girl was stripped of her face and masked by the puppeteer. Her limbs were fixed with nails, and then she was placed on the stage, under the puppeteer's manipulation, to perform an extremely bizarre show. And next to them Saturday, a father and son who had just been kidnapped, and the puppeteer forced them to wait and make sure they cooperated. The information from the police investigation reveals that the puppeteer's name is Mike, and that he was in a car accident a few years ago, and when he woke up, his memory was stuck on the day his father was killed. Since the father was killed at the theater, Mike must be hiding there, and the police immediately go out. The curtain in the theater is slowly drawn back, and a pair of living mannequins appear. Because the mannequin won't cooperate, he is dropped hard on the floor by Mike, who then orders him, "Now you need to save your father," before shooting the bound man in the leg. By this time, the police have arrived, but Mike says that he only needs to wait a short while for his father to be saved. It turns out that Mike has always been haunted by his father's death back then, and as a child he thought that the dolls were his family too, but they failed to save him.
Stop! Come on, do something! Do something!
Now he wants the scenario restored, and this time with absolutely no regrets. The police tell Mike to stop being obsessive. That doll is not alive. It has no consciousness. It only acts when manipulated by a human. What you need to do now is to release these innocent people. Otherwise, what is the difference between you and those criminals back then? At this point, Mike finally began to reflect. He put down the gun in his hand and surrendered voluntarily. At this time, the stage rang a round of applause. Mike thought this was the audience's recognition of his own. He also kept saying thank you to everyone, but with the police officer's point of view to the stage. There is no audience here.